Representative Anderson moves that House File 787 be placed on the register. Representative Anderson, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Thanks for hearing the bill today. And with that, Mr. Chair, I have an amendment.
All right. Representative, if you could maybe just move a little closer to the microphone as well, and maybe I'm just deaf too, but Representative Anderson, if you want to present your amendment to get the bill in the shape that you'd like it.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the DE1 amendment. And what this amendment does is just better aligns the intent of the bill, which is to exempt utilities from having to apply the carbon-free standard to generation that they may have outside of Minnesota.
All right. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed? No. The ayes have it. All right. Your bill as amended. Representative Anderson.
That was a strong endorsement. So again, thanks for this opportunity. House File 787 is a bill that provides a necessary clarification to Minnesota's 100% carbon-free by 2040 law. House File 787 ensures that our policy remains focused on electricity generation within Minnesota's borders and doesn't attempt to regulate power plants in neighboring states, something that has been already ruled unconstitutional in federal court. Minnesota's carbon-free law was passed with the intent of transitioning the state's electricity to carbon-free sources. And while I didn't support that mandate, it's now law, and we must ensure that it's implemented in a way that is legally sound and does not expose Minnesota to costly litigation. In North Dakota versus Hettinger, a federal court struck down Minnesota's prior attempt to regulate out-of-state electricity production, ruling that it violated the Dormant Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution, the Federal Power Act, and the Clean Air Act. As a result, Minnesota taxpayers were forced to pay over $1.3 million in legal fees to the state of North Dakota. And without House File 787, we are risking another costly and I think unwinnable legal battle. And I think all of you have in your packets a letter from North Dakota Governor Kelly Armstrong, and you can peruse that at your leisure. The law as currently written could be interpreted as an attempt to control how electricity is generated in North Dakota and other states that export power here into Minnesota. That interpretation would again violate federal law and invite litigation, diverting resources away from meaningful energy policy and toward unnecessary legal expenses. And with that, Mr. Chair, I have a testifier who would like to explain the bill further.
All right. Thank you, Representative Anderson. We have Jonathan Fortner from the Lignite Energy Council. If you'd get into the table and introduce yourself for the committee, and you can move on with your testimony.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. For the record, my name is Jonathan Fortner on behalf of the Lignite Energy Council. This bill is a common sense clarification to ensure that Minnesota's 100% carbon-free 2040 law is not interpreted as an extraterritorial regulation of legal business activity and electricity production in another state. For decades, North Dakota's energy industry has played a critical role in providing affordable, reliable baseload electricity to Minnesota consumers. Our longstanding energy partnership has contributed to economic stability and grid reliability for both of our states. Today, North Dakota exports more than 20,000 gigawatt hours of electricity annually. Much of it flows into Minnesota through the MISO grid. North Dakota's traditional baseload generation has helped maintain grid resilience, particularly during times of peak demand and extreme weather. At the same time, North Dakota remains a national leader in environmental stewardship. Our state ranks third in the nation for air and water quality, and we're one of only 4 states that has never violated the federal ambient air quality standards. Moreover, North Dakota is at the forefront of carbon capture and storage innovation, investing over $268 million in clean energy research and development through programs such as the Clean Sustainable Energy Authority. Our unique geology provides an unmatched opportunity for safe and permanent carbon sequestration, with a capacity to store over 252 billion tons of CO2, equivalent to over 50 years of the nation's entire carbon emissions. The passage of 787, House File 787, ensures that Minnesota will continue to benefit from North Dakota's energy production and our commitment to clean energy innovation by clarifying that Minnesota's carbon-free standard applies only to in-state generation. This bill prevents unintended consequences that could hinder carbon capture efforts or disrupt interstate energy commerce. The alternative is an interpretation that extends Minnesota's policies beyond its borders, raising significant constitutional concerns as already decided in the North Dakota v. Hettinger case. Minnesota's energy future is best secured through continued collaboration with its neighbors. By supporting this bill, you uphold the integrity of interstate commerce, ensure continued access to reliable electricity for Minnesota ratepayers, and allow North Dakota's energy industry to fully realize its potential in carbon capture and sequestration technologies. I respectfully ask the committee to support House File 787 to help reinforce the strong energy partnership between our two states. Thank you for your time, and I would be willing to stand for any questions.
Are there any questions at all? All right. We'll just keep going. If you do think of one, feel free to raise your hand, but we have more testifiers that signed up. We have Vita Konitz from the Minnesota DFL Environmental Caucus. Konitz. You want to introduce yourself for the committee? Thank you.
Hello, Chair Swazinski and members of the House Energy Committee. My name is Vita Konitz. I'm a mom, a grandma, a retired high school science teacher, and I'm not a paid lobbyist. I'm a volunteer, a citizen lobbyist. I represent the DFL Environmental Caucus. We advocate for action on climate and preservation, the protection of the environment, have been doing so since 2015. You are all here as public servants, and I thank you for your service and believe your intentions, Mr. Anderson, for bringing this bill forward are honorable. But frankly, my first reaction after reading House File 787 was outrage. Why are we hearing yet another bill that threatens the health and security of our children and grandchildren? Then I read North Dakota Governor Kelly Armstrong is threatening a lawsuit to protect that dangerous lignite coal that they value so much. But legal precedent has been shown will strongly support such a lawsuit will not be successful. I hope you all read the testimony Fresh Energy submitted from the Harvard lawyer saying, in several cases, this has not worked. No one elected representatives from North Dakota to represent the Minnesota people here. You are representing us. And this isn't the first time that North Dakota has worked to prop up their coal industry, their dirty coal industry, at the expense of the environment and the autonomy of Minnesotans. You may recall in 2021, Great River Energy had planned to close Coal Creek Station and tap into North Dakota's abundant wind energy with investments that would bring 95% clean energy at lower cost to their member owners such as me. But the McLean County Board adopted a zoning change that prohibited new energy transmission lines, a move that banned new wind farms access to Great River's transmission lines. There is no valid, legal, economic, or environmental reason to pass this bill. You must act to protect the citizens of Minnesota from the harm and the significant financial burden of the continued use of dirty fossil fuels and lignite coal. Get our electric utilities to seek clean, renewable energy options and make Minnesota a leader, continue to be a leader in the clean energy revolution. The benefits will be cheaper, reliable, more efficient electric energy with a net positive impact on our economy, our health, and our climate. And I thank you for listening.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions? All right. Representative Anderson, to your bill. Oh, we have a list? Is there any members from the public that would like to testify on behalf of this bill? Representative Acom?
I will just maybe have some comments. I don't know that I have any questions. I think the bill is pretty straightforward, and I think its intention is to move us backwards. I think that when we passed the 100% clean energy bill in Minnesota, it was done with a lot of input by a large stakeholder group, and I think Minnesotans are glad that we are moving in that direction for many reasons, economical, environmental, public health, and all of things. I think when we are looking to other states and other countries and the energy that we take in, there are certainly a lot of considerations. I think the letter that was included in our packets today demonstrates that there are some very people who are much more educated on this and work in this area have looked at our bill, have looked at our policy, excuse me, and feel that we are in a very strong situation or a strong standing. So I think the threats of a lawsuit are just that. I think they are threats. I think that when we talk about new industries coming to Minnesota, data centers, for example, one of the reasons they're coming here is because of our policies on clean energy. And so for a whole host of reasons, I think this is absolutely, it's not a good bill. So I encourage members on this side to vote no. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Hollins?
Thank you, Chair. I do have a question for the bill author because I've been reviewing some of the court cases around this, and I know that there was a decision, I've got the decision in my hand, was upheld by Justice Neil Gorsuch in the 10th Circuit Court, back when he was in the 10th Circuit Court, saying that Colorado's clean energy law was not unconstitutionally getting in the way of commerce. And they did it's a pretty in-depth analysis of why that is. And I was wondering what's different about Minnesota's law that makes you think that it's vulnerable to lawsuits?
Representative Anderson?
Mr. Chair and Representative Hollins, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what Colorado's law is, so I can't comment on that. I just know that from past history, Minnesota did lose a case in the Hettinger case, $1.3 million in court costs. And again, I can't comment on Colorado's law.
Representative Hollins, do you have a follow-up?
I do. I guess I understand. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative. I understand that you're not a lawyer. I think when you were drafting this bill, was there prior lawsuits that were taken into consideration that would, besides the one, when we look around the country and we look at what is happening, because there are a lot of different clean energy standards that happen across the country, and I'm wondering if there was one that you thought stood out or that was a good model that would be immune to lawsuits.
Representative Anderson?
Mr. Chair and Representative Hollins, again, I didn't write the bill. The revisers wrote it with the input from researchers and staff, people that are a lot smarter than I am. I'm just a farmer who likes electricity when I turn the switch on, and I don't mean to get away from your question because I can't answer it, to be honest. We talk about affordable electricity, and where I live in the country, when you have livestock in the wintertime and such, reliability is the key component to me of electricity. And I think Minnesota attempting to shut off the power line at the border with North Dakota, I don't know how you would do that. If we're going to say we can't have coal power from North Dakota, okay, then let's walk the walk and shut that power line off then, if it's coal power that we don't want here in Minnesota. So I believe in this bill. I think it's a common sense bill. They're not going to stop generating power out there. And the other thing, and again, I don't understand totally, when this power goes on the MISO grid that encompasses 13 states and I think part of Canada, how do you differentiate what is coal power from Bismarck, for example, from a wind farm in Ashtabula? It's on the grid, and again, it's used by MISO, delegated bought and sold on the MISO market, and it becomes a commodity among all 13 states and a foreign country.
Representative Hollins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess when I'm thinking about this, so first I want to say, if you talk to the 100% carbon-free bill author, we know that it was crafted specifically to avoid being the subject of lawsuits. And I will say it's been a couple years now, and there hasn't been a lawsuit. Not that I'm inviting one. But the other thing that I will say is, as a representative of the state of Minnesota and of the 44,000 people that I represent, it's important to me that I'm looking out for them and for their children and for their grandkids and for the people who actually live in my district and live in the entire state of Minnesota. So frankly, I don't care what North Dakota does. I think I have been very clear about this, and you can ask any of the stakeholders that I work with. When there are projects coming to Minnesota, I say, are there going to be Minnesota workers that are hired for these projects? If it's not, I don't want it. And that counts for transmission lines, that counts for everything that we do in this space. And I think the same thing is true. That's great, and North Dakota can do whatever they want. They are their own independent state. But my job is to look out for Minnesotans, and I have to care for making sure my kids have fresh air to breathe and clean water to drink. And so for that reason, I just can't support this. I'm not here to advocate for North Dakota and making sure that, they get free access to the population that we have in the state of Minnesota with their energy. So thank you.
Representative Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Anderson, for the opportunity to talk about this. I guess I kind of just have a comment, I think, because Representative Hollins had a question and you weren't able to answer it. And so my understanding of the reason why we had the legal argument around the current law is much stronger than what we had in 2007, is that in 2007, the part that was, that North Dakota disliked and won on were around the power plant prohibition. So those are much more concrete, much more specific. And that, in that court case, they did not go after our renewable energy standard. And so, that was a decision at the time. We don't know why they didn't do that, and maybe that they felt like they had a weak argument. And so noting that, and also noting that Neil Gorsuch's, his argument in the Colorado case is similar, is around, just requiring that the energy be clean, is at a high enough level that it didn't break the interstate commerce law. So I think that's the reason why we can have faith that the way that we've currently set up our law should not violate the interstate commerce clause, and that seems to be the core argument for this bill. And so I think that I've shown that it's not necessary. So thank you.
Representative Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we are sitting here conjecturing on what may happen in a court of law. And I don't know. I don't think any one of us know for sure what may happen. The letter from North Dakota governor seemed to indicate that they had a legal position to challenge this. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but I think at least the possibility is there, is what I would say to you.
Good. Representative Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Anderson. Similar to Representative Hollins, I think that we have a sound legal defense here. We need to be caring about Minnesotans more than we care about industries in North Dakota.
All right, Representative Igo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple comments to start, and then I do have a question I want to follow up with. I think first statement I'm going to make is, once again, we have Republicans here in the Energy Committee with the section of 2040 open in front of us, and we aren't doing anything to repeal or go back on it. All we are trying to do today, and this way I want to thank you, Representative Anderson, is because you're saying, listen, I just don't want to make sure the state gets sued. I want to take care of ratepayers. I want to care of all constituents of the state of Minnesota in every one of our districts, that they aren't going to have to foot a bill over potential oversight and legislation. And I think that's incredibly wise. I think that's incredibly smart. I think that's actually showing quite a bit of collaboration and bipartisanship that most Minnesotans, if you ask them, want to see. And that's what we're here talking about today. You know, there's been a lot of conversations about whether we'll be sued, whether we won't be sued, and we're talking about a letter from another governor. You know, I may not be a lawyer, Representative Anderson, you may not be a lawyer, but the governor of North Dakota is a lawyer. So if he is sending that letter, I would like to think that he might have some ideas about there could be a potential lawsuit. So again, we opened up this statute in front of us. We aren't cutting out any of the deadlines. We're not cutting out any of the percents. We're just saying, let's clean this up and keep it safe. So I do want to ask if there's anyone from the Department of Commerce here, if I could ask a question to them, if there's anyone that I could ask that to.
Is there, if you want to come forward, introduce yourself to the committee, and then Representative Igo to your question.
Thank you. So my question would be, so the amendment here in front of us that we've changed now in the bill that's in front of us is only going to apply to in-state generation. And if that does not change Minnesota's goal of achieving 100% carbon-free electricity by 2040, can you explain to me how this amendment would negatively impact our goals that are in state law?
To the person from Commerce, if you'd like to introduce yourself and Sam.
Chair Swedzinski, Representative Igo, for the record, my name is Sam Smith, and I'm the Government Affairs Director for the Department of Commerce. And to make sure I understand your question, you're asking how this amendment interferes with 2040?
Correct.
Yep. Representative Igo? Okay. Mr. Smith.
Yeah, Chair Swedzinski, Representative Igo, you know, from our perspective, there is no need for this legislation. In House File 787, the language was thoroughly vetted and reviewed by a host of stakeholders across the spectrum on the legislation, and would add that we believe it's constitutional. House File 787, as amended, undermines Minnesota's 2040 plan and does not help us achieve our climate goals by allowing for pulling power that is potentially made with carbon. So,
Representative Igo?
So I wasn't getting an answer. So my question was, there's nothing in the bill as amended that says that we could use carbon-free power in Minnesota. So you're saying that it would change 2040? That's what I'm trying to get at. How would this change the 2040 goal?
Mr. Smith.
Chair Swedzinski, Representative Igo, it would theoretically allow for pulling carbon power from North Dakota into Minnesota, as I understand the bill.
Representative Igo. Okay.
I think that's why we're looking at changing the policy, because that would open us up to a lawsuit right there. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Smith? Thank you very much for coming for us. Oh, Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's deja vu. We had this exact discussion in 2023 at length. I'm not a lawyer either, but I do encourage folks to read the letter from Ari Pesco, Director of Electricity Law Initiative at Harvard Law School, back from then. To Representative Igo's comments of we should be responsible and because someone is threatening a lawsuit should not do something, I would say that anyone can threaten a lawsuit at any point in time. And that's a pretty low standard for taking action or not taking action. By the way, I'd like to ask for a roll call on this.
A roll call being asked for, we will do one on passage.
So, you know, in 2007, there was a bipartisan Next Generation Energy Act signed by Republican Governor Tim Pawlenty. One portion of that was challenged successfully by North Dakota. What we did in 2023 is not that, is very clearly not that, and that's what this letter says from this Harvard Law lawyer that looks at this stuff. We refuted it then. Excel, as we've heard, is on the path to get to the 2040 law several years in advance. So, you know, and I don't, to Representative Igo's point, question, I believe the issues is that how the 2040 law looks at retail sales, right? And I think actually this would set us back quite a bit in its approach. this kind of law or this kind of bill. And so we don't need it. We're on path. It doesn't, there's 20, it's more than half of the states in the country have some of a law like 2040, renewable standard law. Those haven't been challenged and found that they're wrong or haven't lost. Any time they have been challenged, they've been successfully upheld. So this, again, seems to me like let's pull back more messaging stuff from 2023 that we've been through and is just unnecessary. And so I urge everyone to vote no.
Representative Hollins?
Sorry, second bite at the apple. I think actually Representative Kraft said most of what I was trying to say. I am a lawyer, and you can say that you are subject to lawsuits or that anybody can sue anybody. You can file it. You have to pay a filing fee. You have to fill out some paperwork, and you can do it. You might not win, but the fact that you're saying we're opening ourselves up to lawsuits, anybody can sue anybody. It's the beauty of America. Or the pain of America. But what I will say is just because you are, I think, I don't need to repeat what Representative Kraft said so eloquently. The reality is if we tried to block every time that there might be a lawsuit, we would all need to sit in our homes and do literally nothing, because you could walk down the stairs of the Capitol and trip and fall, and that could be a lawsuit. You can drink water that isn't clean, and that's a lawsuit. I mean, it's literally anything. So when we are talking about something as critical as having clean air, clean water, and the safety and security of our children and grandchildren, I think that is worth the risk. So thank you.
All right, I kind of caught that. All right, thank you. Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for Mr. Smith with the Department of Commerce, if you take another question. While he's running up there, since Minnesota is part of MISO, a multi-state, grid, how do you expect to track or enforce whether or not they're contributing that source of power?
Mr. Smith?
Chair Swedzinski, Representative Murphy, I'm not sure of the answer to that. I'll have to get back to you.
Representative Murphy?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you tell different sources of power as it's being fed through the line?
Representative Smith, or Mr. Smith?
Chair Swedzinski, Representative Murphy, I will admit that I am not an expert on how electricity travels across state lines. If you want, we can get back to you with some more information on that.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Smith. The fact of the matter is you can't tell where the power comes from. You can try to guess where it came from, but once it gets on the MISO grid, you have no idea where the source of the power is. All you can say if you want them to accomplish our goals in the state of Minnesota is basically say it's zero. You have to be zero for all your other customers or any transmission line that comes into Minnesota. Bottom line is coal contributes about 50% of our power in Minnesota. So it will be very helpful for us to have access to their power. And my hope is that if they don't say no to Minnesota for the power. So with that, that's my question. But yeah, I'll be anxious to get your response. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Smith, anything? Representative Murphy, you satisfied there?
all
All
right.
right. Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can maybe help out with Mr. Murphy's question. So in Minnesota, we require our utilities to create integrated resource plans. These plans describe what resources we use to generate electricity, and we regulate that. That is how we know how utilities are complying with the 2040 law.
Representative Murphy.
I have a follow-up, Representative Jones. So would you agree, Mr. Smith, this question's for you then to help clarify this conversation we're having. Would you agree that Minnesota has the authority to regulate electricity generation within its own borders?
Mr. Smith.
Chair Swedzinski, Rep. Murphy, I am not a lawyer. I'm uncomfortable speculating on this. I'm just going to be honest.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Murphy.
One more question. Do you have any idea if it's okay for the state of Minnesota to regulate power or energy in another state?
Mr. Smith.
Chair Swedzinski, Representative Murphy, Again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm hesitant to speculate on the details of energy law.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Mr. Smith, you'd like to get back to me on that? That'd be great, because I'd like to see where it says that it's okay for us to regulate another state's power. So I'd be very anxious on that. Thanks.
Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Murphy, to your question, yes, with the Utility Monopoly Compact, we regulate our utilities here. And so that says, you know, they have to then comply with the carbon-free law. And so they can choose how they are going to meet that through their IRP. They can choose to get, you know, hydropower from Manitoba or wherever. They can get that outside state lines. We just give them criteria for what that type of power is.
Any other questions, comments? All right. A roll call being, actually, Representative Anderson, you can finish off with your bill if you just, your closing comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just sat here thinking, just thought of a hypothetical, you know, if we pass this law knowing that North Dakota uses coal to generate electricity and that we import electricity from North Dakota, are we in a kind of backward way trying to regulate how North Dakota generates electricity? Just a question to ponder. Mr. Chair, in the conclusion, House File 787 does not weaken Minnesota's carbon-free standard. It simply clarifies that the mandate applies to power generation within our own state. It's a reasonable and responsible fix to ensure that Minnesota's ratepayers continue to receive affordable, reliable baseload power, and that we reduce our carbon emissions in our own state. With that, Mr. Chair, I would encourage a positive vote.
All right, Representative Anderson renews his motion that House File 787 be placed on the general register. A roll call being called for. Roll call will be taken.
Chair Swedzinski.
Aye.
Vice Chair Murphy.
Aye.
Lead Acomb.
No.
Representative Kraft.
No.
Representative Anderson.
Anderson, aye.
Representative Baker. Yes. Representative Carroll.
No.
Representative Frazier.
No.
Representative Hollins.
No.
Representative Igo. Yes. Representative Jones.
No.
Representative Mahamud.
No.
Representative Meckland.
Yes.
Representative Sexton.
Yes.
Representative Weiner.
Yes. Thank you. All right. There being 8 ayes and 7 nays, the motion passes, and the bill is on its way as amended to the general register.